Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Clockedin with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Clocked In with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. So I'm Jordan Edwards, and what I'm doing is pretty much I manage to travel internationally once a year, and I started that back in 2017. And the major reason for that was because that's where I felt it's what I wanted to do. I was able to go to Rome, Thailand, Peru, etc. And the point of that I'm making to this is that there's many people when they go through these financial courses or conversations, they sometimes think it's let's not spend any money. And I'm kind of the opposite on that. I'm like, let's spend all the money you want, but on the things that you actually need and that you feel good about. So the other thing I do is I have a podcast. It's called #Clockedin with Jordan Edwards. And we've had people like the founder of Reebok, Joseph Foster, and then NFL super agent Lee Steinberg, and a lot of other really cool people. Even Steven was on it, actually. And the cool thing about it is that I've gotten to learn from a lot of those individuals. And you get to learn about financial literacy. You get to learn other aspects as well. But this has always been an interest of mine for a long time. And when I say that, I mean, like, I've been studying financial literacy since middle school. I've read books like The Richest Man in Babylon, Money Master the Game with Tony Robbins, Millionaire Next Door, and there's tons more. But I say all this because I want to understand that anybody can be financially literate. And I think that there's a major issue going on at this moment because with the recession looming, and they said it was a recession starting in August, a lot of people are scared. Inflation's high and people are concerned about that. So what that means is that this is actually a great opportunity for us because this gives us somewhere that we can actually go. It gives us something where we can actually take advantage of this. And some people ask why I'm doing this. And the real reason is that I just want to help people. If anyone finds one thing of knowledge in here, I think that's great. Or if it reminds you of something, that's amazing too. And in this little tidbit, we're just going to touch on living inside of our means, good debt, bad debt, compound interest, and how discipline can change our life. Now, when I was reviewing this and learning about it, I was looked it up and I found out that 61% of people are paycheck to paycheck. Now, what does that even mean? Well, according to Investopedia, paycheck to paycheck is an expression describing an individual who's unable to meet their financial obligations if unemployed, meaning like credit cards, student loans, mortgage, etc. Those living paycheck to paycheck predominantly devote their salaries to their expenses. Living paycheck to paycheck may also mean living with limited or no savings and refer to people greater financial risk if suddenly unemployed than individuals who have amassed a cushion of savings. So have you guys can just comment in the chat or just kind of, just comment in the chat if you know anyone who's living paycheck to paycheck or anyone that you've seen it. Have you seen this with any of your friends, family? All of my friends. Yes, exactly. So we know it's prevalent. We know it's there and we know people are around. And this seems to be one of the biggest issues because yes, those are going through divorce, too many. Yeah, exactly. And this is what it comes down to is that we live outside of our means because we're trying to keep up with people who we don't even care about. And we're trying to impress people. And we're trying to have these friends. So I want you guys to realize that this can be your neighbor who's got $1 million house and makes $500,000, Or this can be the Walmart worker making $35,000. It doesn't matter who they are, but this is open and accessible to everyone, to everybody. Anybody can live outside their means. Anybody can live inside their means. So those people driving Lamborghinis, Bugattis, those people living in rental homes or like mobile homes, you'd be shocked. There's a demographic behind a lot of it, but sometimes the guy with the Bugatti, he's got more than enough money to afford that. The person in the mobile home might be a millionaire and they just don't want to spend their money. So there's no judgment on any of these. It's just more along the lines that you have to realize that this is a real internal game that we don't usually talk about because it's so scary, because we leave it on the outside so much. And this tends to happen when people are going through things. Like, for example, I had Greg Morton on my podcast. We did it last week. And what he said is he ended up being a managing director, super successful at Citi, done a lot of different things. And he mentioned that in his 30s, he ended up having credit card debt to the point where he defaulted. He couldn't afford the debt, like he couldn't pay it off anymore. And the reason I share this is because anybody can be in this position. It's not who you think it would be. It's not those people that are like, oh, I make a really good salary. Just because you make a good salary doesn't mean that you're financially where you should be. And that's sometimes like the checkup that I'm hoping this can be for everyone. And if you make less money, cool. Try to save as much as you can. So it's really important for us to realize that someone's income does not dictate their ability to save and invest. So I consider it the 3 steps. The first one's earning. So that's how much you make if you have a job, if you have real estate, whatever it is, it's earning capacity. So it's making money. The second one is the amount you save, whatever that may be. And then the third one's investing. Investing, we're not going to discuss this week, but we'll discuss over the next couple of weeks. I just wanted to keep it in the earning and saving categories. So how do we combat this? So Ray Dalio, he runs Bridgewater, and he's one of the most famous investors in the world. He started Bridgewater when he was 26, and I think it managed over like $30 billion, like insane amount. And I'm pretty sure that's undershooting it. But what Ray Dalio said is that we need to save more than we spend. Pretty straightforward, keeps it easy. And then the second thing he said, which was kind of interesting, was you can increase money through like side hustles or through alternative, they call it like the gig economy, through doing other activities. And that's something that not a lot of us consider, because when we're sitting here, like a normal person, you can have people in a sales role, you can have people in a regular operations role. Now, in either of those W-2 roles, like usually you get a little raise, you'll get a little bonus, whatever it may be. But sometimes if you were able to do a side hustle, that might be able to open up your eyes to what's really out there. So when I say that, I mean, that could be even driving Uber, providing a service, managing buildings. It could be cutting lawns, selling products on e-commerce, making someone's life easier and doing a value exchange for money is whatever it could be. Now, when we go through this, you have to realize that you have to realize, am I making enough money? If not, how do I make more money? Is it going to be through a side hustle? Is it going to be finding a new job? What is that strategy going to be for you? And this is happening when you keep overspending. So we'll take an example really quick, just to break it down, of 2 people. There's one person who makes $55,000. We're not including taxes. We're not doing that. And then another person who makes $100,000. Now, would it be possible for the person who makes $100,000 to have less than the person who makes $55,000? I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. So this is the first person. They make $100,000 salary. We're regarding taxes, leaving that out. They have a $3,000 rent, $150 electric, Wi-Fi, phone, gym, car, all of it. Total reoccurring, $4,000. That's their fixed expenses. Now, when I dive into this, you have to realize what your fixed and your variable expenses are. So fixed expenses are like, it used to be rent. but it's now only rent for 12 months because people are raising rents, or having their rents raised. Now, if you have a mortgage, that could be a fixed expense, but the taxes and insurance might go up. So a real fixed expense is only fixed for a period of time, and whatever that may be. And that's sometimes with different loans, different areas, but this is pretty much the amount of money that you should have to dish out each and every month. And this is on a very simple caliber. Like, this can get significantly more complex if you have investment properties and multiple businesses, and this is like a really simple example. So we have the $100,000 salary. They pay all of this $4,000 fixed a month. And because of that, you think they'd be all right, right? Like, they make $7,692 over every monthly inflow. But the problem is that they spend $4,000 on variable expense, which is like going out, eating dinner, $800 on investing, and then $200 on loans, which means that their outbound is really $89.50. So they're overextending themselves, even though they're investing the $800 a month. This could be someone that's putting their money into their 401k and then they're overspending. But how are they able to overspend, you might ask? Credit cards. When you use a credit card, you can swipe it and it will say, this is like, you might have $10,000 line, whatever it is, and it lets you roll over that debt at a very cheap rate. It's cheap for the customer to pay. But the thing is that it's an expense because each month it builds up. And we'll dive more into that with compounding. But essentially right here, the person who has 100,000 is losing $1,257 a month, and they're overspending $41 a day. So now we're going to share the second one. And I want you guys to tell me who's in a better financial situation just based off this. Now, the salary for this person is $55,000. They have a rent of $1,000, electric $100, Wi-Fi $50, phone $25, car $400. Their 2-week salary is $2,155. Their fixed expense is $1,575. And like we said, the fixed is usually going to be your rent, your car payment, your phone, your gym, your Wi-Fi, your electric. Like, they might change, but they're pretty much going to be sit around where they are. So this person only spends actually $800 a month, and then they invest $800 and they pay off $200 in student loans. So their monthly inflow is $4,230, and their expenses are $3,375. So that means each month they're keeping $855. So who would you guys say is in a better situation? The 100,000 person earner or the 55,000?
55.
Yeah, exactly. The 55,000 person earner. Now, I say this because we all live in very, like, I know some of the people here are Tampa, some Canada, New York, New Jersey. We all know people who are going out, spending their money every single weekend, doing all of that, and that's fine. But you just have to realize, like, what is best for you? What is a benefit? What's a good thing for you? And like I said, this is all an internal game. Like, no one's going to ever know if you don't go somewhere because of a certain commitment you have to yourself. But what this really comes down to, just this component of the spending, and I'll share a budget with you guys at the end. What this comes down to with the budgeting is really fixed and variable expenses. And what I mean by that is, what is outside your control, what's in your control, and how much do you make off of that? And with that, you need to have discipline. Discipline is basically going to the gym, working out, working on your golf swing, whatever it may be. And when you guys do this, like, the most disciplined time I ever was actually when I did, it was 75 hard. It was the beginning of 2020. Actually, it was February of 2020. And what it entails is doing 2 workouts a day, drinking a gallon of water, eating clean, no drinking of alcohol, taking a mirror pick, and then 10 pages of reading. And you think this would be difficult, and it was. But the thing is that the discipline freed me because it allowed me to see what there really was. and what I was able to do and what I was able to accomplish. So as I go through this, you need to realize that you need to set disciplined boundaries on yourself, whatever that may be. And I'll show you ways you can do that. So when you guys think of, we'll dive into the good debt and bad debt. When you guys think of credit cards, is that good or bad debt? You guys can just comment. You can unmute, whatever it is. Okay.
Bad.
Bad debt. Okay. It could be bad debt, or it could be good, whatever it is. I agree with you, Sam, that it's bad. And bad debt, I think, is because the reason for that is because credit cards, what they do is they end up compounding. So there's a thing such as compound interest. And what compound interest is, and this is from Investopedia as well, it's interest on a loan or deposit. So a loan would be a credit card and a deposit would be you investing. And this is calculated based on both the initial principal and the accumulated interest from the previous periods. Compound interest can be thought of as interest on interest. It will grow the sum significantly faster than simple interest, which is calculated only on the principal. So compound interest happens with credit card companies, but it also happens with investments. And compounding interest can be one of your best friends. When I learned about compounding interest, it was through Warren Buffett. I was reading one of his books and he was explaining it. And essentially what it said was, if you are able to invest, like for an example, if we're able to invest $1,500, like the two biggest components of compounding interest are what's the amount that we can put in, and then what's the interest rate we'll get, and then the length of time that we have. So I know some of the people here are a little bit younger, some are a little bit, a lot of us have many years left. So if you say we have 40 years, then I want to show you something. There's this website. It's just InvestorGov. You can just go on compoundinterest.com or look up compound interest. It's pretty simple. And it's fascinating. And what it is like the example I picked was you have $1,500, you put in $50 a month, $600, and you let it go for 40 years at a 10% interest rate, which is the S&P 500. Now, I know I went through that really fast, but I'll break it down. So the way compound interest works is that you have to pick a certain amount that you start with. That can be $5, that can be 500, that can be 5,000, 500,000, 5 million, whatever the number is. Now, when you put in these amounts, then you'll make contributions on that, or maybe you don't make any contributions on that and you just let it grow itself. And the cool thing about this is with the interest rate, there's the S&P 500, which is a stock. And the way it works is it takes the index of all of the top 500 companies in the world. And what that means, double penny every day. Yeah, exactly. And what that means is if you do that, if you put into the S&P 500, on average, over its entire duration has been 10% a year. And that's over like 80 years. And it's the top 500 companies by market cap, which is basically how much money is in the stock. Like what's the stock valued at? Yeah, exactly. If you double a penny, Stephen, exactly. If you double a penny every day for 30 days, it's $5 million, or you take the $1 million. Exactly. So I wanted to show you guys this. If you had $1,500, which is not a whole bunch, and we do monthly contributions of $50, and we do that over 40 years. And this is just a simple account. Like, it's not a big account, 10% interest annually. The results are $300,000 plus. Now, if you just adjusted one of these to 45, It's $540,000 just for an extra 5 years. If you leave it at 10 years, and this is just a small amount, it's $1,300. I just want you guys to understand this, because once you understand the compound interest, then you can really understand full growth and really gathering that momentum, because this same thing happens in reverse with credit cards and with bad debt. And that's high interest. It will do the same exact thing for you. Now, if you move this to 40,000 and you put the interest rate to 12, it's 599,000. So you don't need the extra the 5 years. You just need a 12% annualized return. If you're at 8%, it's 188,000. So it's definitely really important to find these good interest bearing assets. So these assets that will make more money for you. So that kind of leads me, I'll drop this in the chat just so you can fumble around with this if you're interested. Because it definitely is super fascinating. And once you understand this, then you'll really understand what you're missing out on and what you're why you should be doing this. It makes a massive difference. And when you do this on your own, because everybody can, you can do it through Fidelity, TD Ameritrade. There's a bunch of different apps. Robinhood's got kind of cut down, but there's a lot of different applications to this. And one of the biggest benefits is that when you have a long-term period of investing, so a long-term's over a year, the capital gains is significantly lower than if it's short-term. So I know I might be using terms that are a little advanced, but my whole point about this is if you're able to invest a little bit of money each month over a long period of time, it will make a massive difference. It will make a humongous difference. And I want you to just play around with this, because I want you to realize that investing can be easy. It can be fun, but it's the long game. So that's really the other thing I want to talk about is long-term versus short-term. When we think about our lives, a lot of these people that are overspending, if any of us do, it's usually a short-term gratification. So maybe it's, I got to go on that trip, or maybe it's, I got to go to that bar, or I got to go to that sporting event, or I got to do this, or it's just, I just wanted to hang out with my friends, whatever it is. There's so many different dynamics, but sometimes we just have to say no. And you just have to realize that it's not a no thing, or it's an earn more thing, whatever that may be for you. So as I kind of go through this, I want you guys to realize that the short term it's kind of instant gratification. It's something that happens really fast. It gives us the benefit very quickly. And when we look at the other side, where it's a long term, you see this right now, you don't really see a difference. The contribution here is 13,500, and you're at 44,000 20 years down the line. And when this happens, you have to realize that you're not going to see the real gains quickly. This is definitely a long-term game, and it takes some time. And it's not going to happen quickly. It's not going to happen fast, but it will happen definitely, which is the most important. So going through that, did anybody find that interesting? That little compounding interest? Because most of the time we're never taught this. We're never showed this. We're never expressed this. And I don't want there to be anybody feeling like they're missing it or not having it, because that's attainable. That compound interest is attainable for everyone. And it can happen for a multitude of ways. Yeah. With the thumb up. Yeah, absolutely. So some of the ways that we can do this are through realizing what's good and what do we need to improve on, right? So we talked about it a little bit, but it's really that short-term versus long-term thinking. Are we thinking for the long term, or are we just focused on the short? Do we just want the initial benefit? What is it that we're really going to have, or is it that we want to do, or is it that we want to do the long term, in which case we're not going to see benefit for a long time. You might see hints of it here and there, but overall, it's going to take a much longer period of time. And I say this because with us realizing that there's a long-term view and a short-term view, we need to view this in every aspect of our life, right? Like, so we have friends. If you know you're going to be friends with someone for 40 years, would you be mean to them? Like, would you stop being friends over a quick period? Or would you take that moment and be like, no, I'm going to be with these people for a long time. So let me resolve it now. Or if you think about it, like the average age is 77 that people live to, or if not higher at this point. And that means that if I work out every single day, I can live longer and live a healthier life. And that's a long-term view. A short term would be like, let's just have the drink and let's just hang out, whatever it is. Or overeat or do anything. But I just say this because we need to shift our perspective from short-term delayed gratification is what they call it. So it's delaying the good feelings to long-term. And you have to get happy with that long-term, because when you see the progress happen in 3 years, in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, you'll be so impressed with how far you've come, because most of the time we don't see this. It's not valid. So I know this has all gone around and we talked about good debt and bad debt, but we haven't really touched on the good debt. So some of the good debt you can have is actually, for myself, is I think purchasing homes. Like, homes are an asset. So the way we look at it is if someone pays it, it's an asset. And assets tend to happen is they produce you money. They increase in value instead of decreasing in value. Liabilities decrease in value. So what can be considered a liability is a new shirt, a desk, a cell phone. I mean, a cell phone is probably an asset. It can be anything, a new pair of shoes. It could be that trip you've always wanted to take. These are considered liabilities, quote unquote, but assets, they can also be assets as well, because they'll make you feel more confident, feel better about yourself. But essentially, as asset is spending money and that money increasing. Liability is spending money and that money decreasing. So like if you go out and go to a dinner, that would be considered quote unquote a liability, because that liability goes down. An asset would be investing into a complex, like a syndicate, crypto kind of. An asset would be investing in the stock market. An asset's anything that grows. So when you think about your money, when you get your money each month or whenever you do, is your money going up or is your money going down? And we need to think about that, because once we understand the assets and liabilities, then you can go to the next step of, okay, here's where I'm spending my money. I'm spending my money on liabilities, or I'm spending it on them on assets. And one of the ways I was able to completely change this around about myself is I have this thing called associations. Tony Robbins talks about it. And what associations are it's essentially like if we go to eat pizza, right? So when you go and eat pizza, you can think, oh man, this is so good. Like, this is the best pizza I've ever had. It tastes amazing. I just want more. Or when you think of pizza, you can think of, this is going to make me have high cholesterol, have a heart attack, and I'm going to die. It's not that one's right or wrong. It's that whatever your associations are, that's usually tends to get you excited or influenced in the way you're going to act. So for myself, one of the ways I did this was I created assets. I created an association to assets, that when I get new assets, I feel like I just bought myself a new t-shirt. So when I would invest more money into stocks, I'd be like, oh man, like, look how cool this is. This is awesome. And it gave me that fulfilling feeling. So when we can adjust our associations, it definitely will help us make those better decisions. But as we went around assets and liabilities, we're going to move back to that good debt conversation. So good debt is anything that allows you to, quote unquote, leverage your money, which is basically when you purchase a home. If you purchase a home, you might put 3% down, 5%, 10%, 20%, and then the bank will cover the rest of that loan. Now, why that's leverage is because you're giving some of your money, let's say it's 5%, and then the bank is covering 95% of that, which would be debt. But it's appearing that to the owners when you're purchasing the home that you have you have the funds secured to get that. So that's why assets like real estate gives you the leverage. So which that means is when your asset goes up, you're reaping the benefits of all of that. You still have to repay your debt, but you're gaining the benefits of everything that goes up. Now, one of the major benefits of this is that you can take a small amount of money and create a large amount of money because you can start off with a small amount, get leveraged a little bit, and then as long as you can quote service the debt, which is paying monthly, then you'll be able to support it. Now, some people are opposed to that. Some people say all debt is bad. And there's like student loan debt, there's credit card debt, there's buying home debt, there's business line debt, there's tons of different types of debt. Debt is basically you borrowing money from someone else. And when you do that, whenever you borrow money, you just have to realize that you have to pay those people back. And whenever that is, that's how it works. But one of the major benefits is like, for example, with a credit card, people consider bad debt. Now, each month you get a bill. When you get that bill, that doesn't mean that you have to keep it. You can pay it off each month, which is what some people do. But in our example with the $100,000 man, $100,000 a year guy, he was actually keeping, how much was he keeping? He was keeping $1,257 each month on his credit card. Not on his credit card, but you know what I mean. He's overspending, which means he's not covering his credit card bill. And when that happens, that awesome thing that we just saw, compound interest, actually happens to you in reverse. So what that means is that you'll actually it'll snowball in the opposite direction, which is exactly what the credit card companies want, because then you're just paying them on and on and on. And what ends up happening is you aren't able to pay off the debt because it amounts to too much. And this is some of the stuff we're seeing with the actions of some of the different governments going on. And there's a lot of people who are just living on this sort of a debt cycle where it's like, can we service the debt? And like I said, it can be good or bad, but this one is due to the fact that you're overspending, which means you're partying too much, or you're drinking too much, or you're eating out too much, or you're traveling. You're just living outside of your means, whatever that may be. You might have got an apartment that's too much. It can be anything. And once you realize that it's time to take accountability and scale it down, whatever it may be, or it can be time to increase your income. But you really have to develop these little habits of what we're referring to as compounding interest. This works on each and every day. Like, so if you're able to start off with $1,000, $500, $100 and develop this habit when you're making less money, then as you make more money, because it's called a life creep. And essentially what it is like, as your income rises, that leads your expenses to rise, because now I have a family. I need a 4-bedroom house, not a 2-bedroom house. I want the boat. I want the car. I want I want this. And there's so many people that live outside their means. It really deters from what we're trying to accomplish here, which, if you're on this, it's to be able to be financially sound and really understand what we're working with and understand what there is. Because when we don't take this seriously, like one of the best things that Ray Dalio said was, he said this quote, "If you worry now, then you have nothing to worry about. If you don't worry, then you have everything to worry about." And what that means is, like, as we're heading into this recession, I just wanted to frame this all that we need to be getting prepared. We need to be getting situated, because if you have access to capital, which could be investors, if you have cash on the sidelines, these are all ways for you to take advantage of this system. Because right now, stocks are down, real estate's still up, crypto's definitely down. And there's a ton of other asset classes like watches, cards. If you're able to invest correctly and have that money when everyone has to sell because they might have overextended themselves, then there's a huge opportunity coming, like a massive opportunity coming here where we can take advantage of that. So the next thing I want to talk about is in this recession, what are you doing? How are you preparing? And one of the ways I always like to prepare is I have a savings number. And when I say a savings number, it's a rainy day fund. It's whatever you want it to be. It could be a revolving credit card. It could be cash on the sidelines, whatever that is. I want you guys right now to choose a number. Whatever that number is, it can be 5,000, 10,000, 25,000, 50,000. Whatever that number is, I want you guys to write it down, because what it's going to be is that's going to be your hard and fast number. Meaning, and this is when I talk about this, I'm regarding money in your bank account. When you have this number in your bank account, the financial burden that goes on when you can't service your loans, or you have credit card debt, or you can't make your payments, is you got two modes. One is fuck it, like whatever, we'll figure it out, we're young. Or it's, how am I going to handle this? I don't even want to tell anyone. I want to keep it secret. I don't feel comfortable with this, whatever that may be. So, and I'm not asking anyone to share, but I'm asking you to have, removing that financial burden allows you to think a lot clearer. It allows you to think a lot more straightforward. So let's go with savings, whatever your savings number is. It's a number that, like, if you got laid off, if you could service your debts, whatever it is, it's a really important number, because what it is like, that's the number that's going to keep you sane. So whether that's 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, just leave that in your bank account. Once you decide on that number, I want you first to save up to that number. Once you have that number, then you can go off and invest, go off and explore, go off and look at different opportunities. Because without that number, like, once we have that number, it calms us down a lot. It keeps us in a very sane place. Or there's the contrary of, if you hit that number, let's invest it, and then it will keep you remotivated. For myself, I like having that number, and it allows me now to say that that number is sometimes in cash, sometimes in stocks, sometimes invested around, but at least you have access to that number. So you can sell it at whatever point you want. Now, it's really important to realize that, because once you have that, then you'll have some more clarity on where you are in your situation and what you need to do. Because without that, we're not working towards it. The second thing I would say is you need to have goals. Like, you need to set these goals in ways that you want to accomplish it. And it's not like, hey, let me spend less money this month. How are you going to even track that? Like, I'll send you a budget, and we looked at this budget, but how does someone track that? One of the ways I do it is I actually view my credit card, like, as I was talking about the associations before, many people use associations for good and for bad. So sometimes credit cards, people are like, I got to pay this off immediately. If I use my credit card, then I pay it off. That's one way of using a credit card. Some people use it, I'm going to let it run this month and then I'll pay it off. Other people, I'm going to let it run and I'm going to pay the minimum balance, whatever it is. Everyone's got their own approach. Now, the way I use it is I have a number. So now the second thing I want you to do is, after you, let's use this for example, this 100,000 for this person. I want you to realize that So now we have our savings number. That's the one number that you got to have, whatever that number is, write that down. And then you got to work towards having that so that you feel that comfort level. Now, the next thing I want you to do is realize what's your variable spend? How can someone even track that? Like, do you want me to write down in a checkbook every single time I had a payment? Like every single time I bought something? Like, is it realistic? Do you want me to put it into a budgeting tool? Like, what do you want me to do? So the real way for me to do this is I just put everything on one credit card. And every single month I put everything on that credit card. Why? Because a credit card is actually a level of protection. So when you're using a credit card, you're using the bank's money. They're letting you use that money for a month before you have to pay for it. Now, when you use your debit card, you're using your money, which means if either one's gets hacked, a debit card, if it gets hacked, it's going to take your money out. And it's going to be a pain in the butt to get that money back. Now, if they take the bank's money, who's got, I don't know, billions of dollars, trillions of dollars moving through it, they'll refund you your money and they'll deny the payment. So you have to realize that a credit card is protection, but it's also an assistant. I use mine as an assistant. It's my budgeting app. Because what it does for me is, let's say whatever this number is, like, so this is the person, they already have their monthly rent, that's fixed. Their electric, their Wi-Fi, their gym, their car, whatever. They have their spend, they're fine. If they cut down their variable spend to 2,000, then they're still, oh no, this would actually be in the green. It's just the coloring on this. So they would actually be keeping $742 a month, which then they can do whatever they want with. They can invest more, they can live however they choose. Or it can be put to their saving number, whatever it is. So the way I would track this variable spend is I would pick a number, and whatever that number is that you want to spend, whether that's $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, whatever that number is monthly, let's see, you can check back on your credit card statements and you'll see what your numbers are over the last 6 months if you've been spending money on your credit card. You can use it as a tool. It'll let you know if you're doing well one month or doing bad. So it's one of the biggest things I do is I use everything on my credit card. It gives you protection, but it also lets you know how much you're spending. Now, another rule with using a credit card is that you need to always pay that off every single month. Like, try whatever you can, because their interest rates are like 20%, which means if we go back to that example where we were talking about the compound interest, here, I'll show you. See, this interest rate would be actually 24. That's usually what it is. You wouldn't have it for 40 years. You might have it for 5. Calculate. So look, your total contributions were 4,500, but the actual value of the debt is 9,200. So now you're just paying more each and every month for stuff that you already bought. For stuff like, I'm trying to express this in a very simple way, but it's really the expenses that come to you. You're not getting an asset. It's your assets are not appreciating. They're not going up in value. This is just a t-shirt or a big night you had 3 months ago that's causing you to pay more and more and more every single month. And I wouldn't bring up so much on credit cards if I didn't know the statistics, because I found out that basically there's like 320 million Americans. You got to equate, some are kids, some are not. Essentially, 14 million Americans have over $10,000 on credit card debts. Now, what that means is that there's a massive amount of the population that they are just not allowing to succeed. They're just keeping them in this bubble. And when have a credit card debt, you're keeping yourself, the credit card company ends up being the owner. They literally, they're the person you work for. They're the person that you have to do everything for. So you have to realize, like, who do you want carrying your debt? Who do you not want? Do you want to be debt free? Whatever that is, but you have to make your own decisions. So, I mean, in this past 40 minutes, we talked about a lot of stuff, but it basically covered earning, saving, how discipline can make a difference, what we can do differently regarding good debt, bad debt, and long-term and short-term view. And one of the last things I want to leave you guys off with, and then we can open up if anyone has a question or not. One of the last things I want to leave you guys off with is we're all super young. We're super duper young. And because we're so young, we have many, many years that we can use this compounding interest to our benefit. So I would highly advise, well, it's not financial advice, but I would see if you can start investing and see what that can be, whatever that is, or save your money and be ready to go. But either way, you have a long time. This recession is actually a benefit. It's going to be a good thing. And I hope you found some value. So does anybody have any questions? Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there and have a great day and keep clocking in.